Good morning or good afternoon, ladies, depending on your locale. And thank you for tuning in to Torah with a Takeaway. We are doing our third installment of Megillas Rus due to popular demand. And first, I wanted to address a very thoughtful attendee of this class asked me a few questions, and I thought I'd share them with you. They were just basic understanding the questions from last time. So I just wanted to quickly deal with them. We'll quickly recap a drop of Parak Gimel, which I thought that would be our last class. So I kind of like really summed it up quick. But today we can go a little bit more detail, and we will conclude with Parak Dalet. So we'll have very little overlap. First question was asked of me in the beginning of the second chapter, Parak Base. I just was saying as an afterthought, so to speak, that we have a tradition from the members of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the latter prophets who helped form our siddur, that whenever it says in text in Tanakh, Ushmo something, and his name was, there's a differentiation between that and so-and-so was his name. Like, for example, by Boaz, it says, and his name was Boaz, and that's supposed to be a sign the person's righteous. And if it says, and something was his name, it means he's not righteous. So there was nothing really deep and profound there, but that the tradition we have there is, it's almost like an expression we have in English now, living up to your name. If you're living up to your name, if it says Ushmo Boaz and his name was Boaz, his name precedes him. That's really what it means. His name precedes him. And that's already found its way in the English language. That means the person lived up to what he was named. Whereas if your name comes first and then it says that was his name, that means you came first and you didn't live up to the great things you're named after or for. Okay, that's all that point was about. Second question, the person was bothered, like they said, was it so nice that here he sent along gifts to Naomi, sent her food with Rus, and yet I was mentioning as an afterthought that, we have laws, let's say, with giving presents on Purim, Shalach Manas, you're giving, two different food blessings to one person. Two different foods rather. A man shouldn't give to a woman, woman shouldn't give to a man unless you're least engaged, because it shows a degree of affection that you're giving to each other. So she asked me, how could Boaz have even entertained the thought of giving to Naomi? Well, first of all, according to some opinions, I couldn't find the source this time, but she's definitely related herself. She's from Beis Lechem. She's also from this distinguished family. Some people say perhaps she was even a cousin to Boaz. But even if not, her husband was, we'll see, related. There's two opinions of how they were related, but they're closely related. And to help the widow of your cousin or whoever it was, or your nephew or whatever, or your uncle, those are very important things. So, that's no question that he could give, and it's giving to the poor, and he's giving her food. He's not giving her, jewelry. He's not buying her something personal. It's food, which is permissible. And in this case, it was to someone who was somewhat related, whereas Rus was, questionable whether she was even a Jew. And she's totally unmarried, very good looking and all that. That would have been very, non-appropriate. Let's put it that way. The third question was, we talked about last week in brief, we're going to revisit it again soon. And that question is, that Rus was told by Naomi to lie down next to his feet, like at the foot of his bed, lie down near where his feet were and uncover them in the middle of the night. Then she slept near his feet. We mentioned in those days, until the time of David HaMelech, there was no law forbidding a person to be alone with an unmarried woman, unless, of course, it's somebody that's forbidden to you. But there was no question being alone in those days. So that was first of all, and second of all, this is the whole gist of it, that by Mashiach, we find the most murky relationships occurring. Like Tamar and Yehuda is definitely not one for the books, and Bathsheba and David and the daughters of Lot, and even Rachel and Leah, two sisters. All these things teach us, there's an opinion that this had to be like a Kabbalistic thing where you're taking from the dark, you're taking all these lights, it's like like the klippas, if any of you know Hasidic works, nitzotzos or whatever, the sparks, the whole idea of Mashiach is he's going to come to the lowliest people and elevate them. And everyone has some redeeming qualities and some elevation that they can gain. A person like Mashiach will recognize that and be able to raise us all up. But the point is that before Mashiach comes, we have to take from, you may have heard this expression, Hasidim are very big on this. Like, let's say one time you have to daven mincha in some very strange, out of the way place that there's no Jews, not a single Jew has ever set foot in. Or why have we been all over the world? Because there's things we have to, we have to give holiness, imbue holiness to different places. So this is the very same idea here with Rus and Naomi. They said anything really holy cannot happen. I'm not going to go with things that I can't explain. There are other explanations, but I don't want to say something that's hard for me to explain myself. But basically, to go, we've got to be able to raise up sparks in these. That's the idea of bringing Mashiach, which is it's going to be a lowly. There's lowliness in the world. We witness this today, and from that lowliness is going to come great heights. And so this is the whole idea why his background is to be like this. We also said it leads to humility. That you can't be too proud of yourself if you said I was related to David and Bathsheba and all these kind of other things. It takes away from your pride. Okay, so those are our questions till now. And also one other thing I forgot to mention, besides the pride, we talked about it being more for the sake of heaven. When you do something you're not getting applause for, and it's even questionable, then you're doing it for Hashem and for no other purpose. There's no ulterior motives here. You're doing everything for the right reason. So for this reason, Mashiach has to come from that to really sense that dedication, that you're only doing it for the sake of heaven. Okay, so now we're in Perek Gimel. We did do Perek Gimel, more or less. I'm going to I'm going to pick up a few points just to repeat, but very few. I'm going to assume you heard well last week, and I don't want to repeat myself, basically. But remember, this is 3 months after the harvest. 3 months, either a convert has to wait before they can marry, or sometimes a widow has to wait. A widow has to wait 3 months before she can remarry. There's also an idea here of Naomi saw that the harvest was over, and she's worried now, is Boaz going to make his move? There's a mitzvah in Parshas Bahar that if you have a relative who needs to sell their property, it's preferable that the property remain in the family, because especially in Israel, they had each tribe, there was tribal ownership, right? So you want to keep it in the tribe. So, this is Beis Lechem people from Yehuda. They wanted to make sure that this field would be kept where it belongs. The field that was belonging to Elimelech. So they wanted to sell it, to redeem it. I don't know, maybe there's a port. It doesn't mention, I guess not important for us to know, but there must have been, I'm sure, a little part she maintained for herself. But most of the field, it's a mitzvah for the family to come along and redeem it for her. And also, as well, if there happens to be somebody to, in the family that needs to be married, you should keep that in the family as well. There is a mitzvah of yibum, levirate marriage, where there is an option given. Let's say if somebody's brother passes away and leaves a widow and they have no children, the remaining brother should marry the widow. And we believe that the neshama, the soul of the departed, is going to enter the child born to that second union. Now, there is an option out, and that option is called chalitza, where you take off your shoe and you do this whole thing. We're going to see that it's not exactly what happened here, but in any case, so Naomi feels that he already let Rus have was very generous with her. He told her, I'm going to help you, and I'm related to Naomi and all that. She felt she hasn't heard back, so she feels now it's time to make the move to ask him to please redeem the fields and also to hopefully marry Rus. Now, they're not connected. We're going to see even in the verses, they're not connected, because Rus is not just a piece of property. It's not the fields and then the wife. They're two different things. A wife is a much bigger thing than a field. So in many ways, and for that reason, like she felt the time has come. So now, so what she basically tells her We mentioned last week, I'm going to get for you a manoach. We gave 2 other interpretations last week, but another interpretation which Rebevda brings down is, I'm going to give you an option to have menucha. It means olam haba. Here's your chance. In other words, alluding to the fact you have an option, opportunity to marry a Talmid Chacham, albeit 40 years older than you. And in the end of the first verse, it says, Asher yetiv lach, that will be good for you. So in other words, she's insinuating this is not just, because it's a mitzvah or because I said so or because I care about my son's neshama. I'm doing this because I feel this is going to benefit you in many, many ways. So now she says in verse 2, it says, hello, Boaz modatanu. Boaz is our relative. Moda also means to know. According to Rav Fall Breuer, Zatzala was the grandson of Rav Shimshon Falher. She says, modatanu means there's 3 benefits that she's expressing to her now that you're going to get from going with Boaz. Number 1, he cares about us. Like moda means, knowledge. Meda, ladas, to know that, he cares. He wants to know about the family. He wants to make sure everybody's fine. That's one big benefit of marrying him. The second thing, it says, Asher hayis et narosav, you were with his maid servants, with the women. In other words, he was careful to protect your tznius. And, and he cared about your modesty and important, that's a very important thing. And the third thing, he's winnowing the barley fields tonight. That shows he has a very big work ethic. And for those 3 reasons, you're going to benefit a lot from being married to him. So what she tells her in Pasuk Gimel, the 3rd verse, v'rachast, and you should wash yourself. Many Meforshim, I think Rashi amongst them, says you should. Now, again, there's more. If you want to listen to last week's class, you'll hear that there was other things I said, but I'm not repeating myself. So she says you should wash yourself. That insinuates Rashi that to take away from your idolatry in case, in a spiritual sense, like even though you have converted, you still have to make sure you don't have any negative influence from your past. Also, it's some people say in the mikvah, in case he wants to marry you tonight, that she should go to the mikvah. V'sachacht, which means you should anoint yourself, like put on cosmetics. V'samta simlo sayach. Now, and you should put your dress. So all the commentaries tell us simla is referring to a special garment, not just clothing. And we mentioned this last time. There was a very big lesson from this that for dates, the modern world sometimes says, oh, be casual on some dates. We believe it's an opportunity. You're doing a holy purpose. You're trying to reestablish a new home in the Jewish people. You're also, in the case of somebody that's learning, if you're going to marry someone that's learning, and most women, the husband knows more than they do, you're giving respect to the Torah by dressing up. I read that in Slutsk, I think I saw this in the Sefer Michel Avos. In Slutsk, that was a big Lithuanian Torah center. People would put on their Shabbos clothes to ask a shaila, to go to ask the rabbi a question. I remember a story, but I don't remember who it's about. There was a famous Rav, Hungarian Rav of previous generation. Whenever he would call Rav Moshe Feinstein on the phone, he would put his hat on and jacket because he thought, I talked to Rav Moshe, I can't just be lying down now. I have to be, there's a certain thing to make us, feel something. Should put on your, you put on your clothing and then you go down to the winnowing place, the threshing floor. Don't let anyone know about you until he finishes eating and drinking. And when he goes and lies down and you know where he's going to sleep, you should uncover his feet and sleep next to his feet, and he'll tell you what to do. So she says, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. And we're going to see this echoed later by Boaz. This is like our prerequisite for Torah, a Rav, or this was her Rebbitzin, who she felt was holier than her and was a Jew from much, much longer. She felt, what you're going to tell me to do, you know better than me, I'll do it. That's it. Okay, anyways, so she did everything that her mother-in-law told her to do. Now, Boaz ate and drank, and he felt very good. And we said that there's a whole thing. Why does it say his heart was good with him? It says that he felt like it's very important. If a person wants to be a giving person, it's important first that you give to yourself sometimes, because especially when you feel like I'm so blessed, I have so much, then it's easier for you to share. So the Boaz was afraid he'd be influenced from all this wealth that he had right now. And this is right after the famine. So he ate sweet things to make himself feel, I have to pay back my creator. And I have to do something to merit sharing and caring and helping other people. There's a famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It says, Shali shalach v'shalach shalach zumi de beinonis. We're told if you say what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, this is average. V'yesh omrim, this is part of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. V'yesh omrim, and some people say zu midas Sodom. That seems to be quite a difference of opinion. Either you're an average Joe or you're a sodomite. How can we understand both opinions coexisting? So I saw years ago a beautiful parish from the Maharal. The Maharal says, I don't have time to analyze that whole Mishnah right now, but I'll just analyze this part of it. He feels is a lot of words here. Shali, shali, shalach, shalach. Thine is mine, yours is yours. Why don't you just, say if you're for yourself and, let each person have his own, that's average. Why don't you say mine, mine, yours, yours, and all these words here? So the Maharal Prague says like this: why are you telling the person, I don't want anything from you? Yours is yours. Why? Because really your internal feeling is mine is mine. I don't want you to ask me for favors. Why am I not asking you any for favors? I don't want to take a penny from you. I'm not going to take anything from you. I'll never take. Some people have a motivation that it's because they really don't want to give. They don't want to be asked to give. So they act to this external way of not taking anything, but it's really so they don't have to be approached when it's time to give. And that's exactly what, so Boaz doesn't mind. Sometimes you have to take, sometimes you have to make another person feel good. Taking is a big form of chesed sometimes. It can make a person feel like $1 million that you'll take something from him. And people feel much more comfortable, when they could do something. Like nobody wants to feel totally beholden to you. People like to feel they can help out in some way. And when you're doing that, then you may, it may be humbling to you because you're not this perfect host that you're asking somebody to do something. But if you agree to let someone help, you're actually going to make them feel more comfortable, usually. And I'm, of course, not to tell them, go wash all my floors and, vacuum my place, but we're talking about something. Let people feel part of the group, part of the family, part of the situation. Anyway, so that's what Boaz did. And also we said that when you eat there was a story that went around about Rav Shach telling a very wealthy person. I never had it affirmed, the story, so that's confirmed. So that's why I don't want to quote the name of this person, but apparently they say, but it fits into what we're saying. I don't know if it's true, that there was a very wealthy person that went to Rav Shach and said that they're multi-billionaire. And they asked Rav Shach, how should I live? How should I conduct my life? And Rav Shach says, you have to live like a billionaire, because if you're going to be tight in your own life, you're going to say, why should he deserve a nice car? Well, if you're going to have to help somebody out, you won't be able to let another person have what he needs. But if you let yourself go, kind of like you're, like the class of people you belong to, then you'll be able to share much more easily. Okay, so it says Vayitav Libo. When it says Vayitav Libo, that he gladdened his heart, we're told that he was osek in Torah. And then the Medrash brings this down, that in fact, this is what helped him overcome those night's temptations, that he had just learned Torah right before this whole encounter happened, before he went to sleep. So he had it before he fell asleep. Now, so he's in the corner of his of the piles of all the harvested barley. Why is he sleeping there? Remember, he was the philanthropist of the generation. If he doesn't oversee this big harvest, first year after all the famine, who's going to take care of the people? If the people are going to steal from him, he's the main person at the door that people knock on. He's got to watch his own finances. It's not being stupid. You have to do it no matter how holy you are. You have to, if you have something, you have to take care of it. Now, in the middle of the night, he likes trembling, shaking, whatever. And there's many different opinions of what he actually felt. Some people said he could have gotten quite angry. He sees like this woman sleeping there, like chutzpah, the gadol hador, and all of a sudden, chutzpah, you're seeing this lady there. Some people say that he was, that he felt it was a lack of respect, that he felt it was like humiliating him. Some people thought it was very not, very not moral and not modest. And then the temptation effect. By face means like he turned around and then he sees it's and he sees a woman sleeping next to him. According to the Medrash, how do you know it's a woman? Like he didn't look at women at all. He put his hand. He felt if it's we can't understand what this means. I just saying it, but we don't understand what this means. He thought it was a spirit, a shin dalet. And apparently they don't have hair, and he felt it had hair on this person. So he said, "Oh my gosh, it's a woman." He drew his hand away, and he said, "Who are you?" And he didn't look at her once the whole night. We'll see in other places too. And she says, "I'm Rus, your servant." And she says this in such clean language, and you should spread your wings. Ufarasta knafecha la mascha. You should spread your wings on your maidservant, Kiko elata, because you're my redeemer. So we're told, Megillas Rus says, there's such a thing, Megillas Rus says there's such a thing as called immodesty with speech, like cursing and using foul language is not befitting a Jewish person. It's called like, how do you say, how do you say it? It's called immorality with speech. Is nivelpeh, like using bad language, is immorality with speech. People are supposed to have a degree of morality when they speak to other people. Now, different than the wife of Potiphar who told Yosef, sleep with me every day for a year, 3 times a day. She just says, and you should spread your wings upon me. Now, I forgot to mention, I want to just go back for one more thing. There's a lot of, in the beginning of this chapter Gimel, Perek Gimel, 3rd chapter, there's a lot of things in Tanakh, it's called Kri and Ksiv, things that are read and things that are written. Sometimes total words in this chapter are missing. Or it's spelled a different way, but you're supposed to pronounce it a different way. Several times, Nomi looks like if you read the difference in the way it's the verse is written and the way the verse is read, Nomi seems to tell Rus that I'm going to dress you and I'm going to wash you. And of course, she's not going to dress and wash a 40-year-old. What it means to say is that Nomi says, I am taking full responsibility. That's what we're supposed to learn from this, that I'm going to be with you in this endeavor because I think it's for the sake of heaven. So here she tells him now that she's going to spread her wings. Now, yeah, it's called Arayas Shel Dibur. That's the Megillas Rus lashon. Arayas of Dibur. It's like a very immoral speech is not nice, befitting for a Jewish person. Okay. Now, when she said, please spread your wings because you're my redeemer, and he answers her, Brucha at Lashem. Now, this shows total control, total restraint on himself, that he's in totally control of all of his thoughts and feelings and everything. Such a holy person. The only one I can compare this to is Rav Chatzkel Levenstein Zatzal. Like when you think of Rav Chatzkel, you think of someone, he wouldn't eat something unless he needed to make a bracha or he needed it for some reason. Otherwise, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't look, he wouldn't do anything that wasn't mandated by his creator. And Boaz, of course, is much greater than him. There's no question. He's in Tanakh and everything else. So here, to not curse her out, to not get angry at her, to not be all frazzled, like, he did for a second. It shows he's human. Human beings do. His initial reaction was like he was shocked, startled when he sees this woman there, and he didn't know what to do. And so he said, "You're blessed by Hashem, my daughter." Like he gave her a bracha here. Now, Nomi gave him a bracha. She said, Baruch Hu Hashem, when he gave them all that food last chapter, Be'er base. We know, so because of the blessing of two tzaddikim, Rus was unable really to have a child. She didn't have a complete womb. And Boaz had 30 children and none of them survived. They say he made like 120 parties when his 30 children got married and they all passed away. And he was 80 years old. So he was 80 and answered, and Rus was not able to bear children. Here she was with another man, a younger man, and she was not able to bear children. So he gave her a bracha. I don't know if he had it in mind that she should have children, but he just gave her, you're blessed by Hashem. Your chesed now is better than the one you did previously, just devoting yourself to your mother-in-law, who's usually your mortal enemy. Is great, but how willing to marry a man 40 years older than you, 40 years your senior. It's unbelievable to go at, because that you're not going after the bachurim, whether he's poor or rich. That's really, really, really incredible. The Amar Rav Yishmael, Rav Yitzchak, I don't know if we said this last week in the Medrash, Ha'isha heves bachur miskein mizakein asher. A woman prefers a nebuch of a young guy than an old rich man. Women like, it's not just the girls that want young looking things. Women prefer younger looking people, and to go do this is quite a thing. So he says to her down Pasuk Yud Aleph, my daughter, don't be afraid. Everything you say, I'm going to do for you. So it's again a Nasev and Ishma echoing. I'm ready to do both. Everyone's ready to give in totally to the other one. One of my grandsons told me that when he left Eretz Yisrael to go into Shidduchim, he asked his mentor, do you have anything you want to tell me, a final word about Shidduchim that I should know about? So his mentor told him, he said, after you get married, he said, whatever your wife wants, unless it's like something really detrimental, you just are there to please her. That's it. Or like Rabbi Orlowik Shlita says, when a person breaks the glass, they should have in mind, this is the only time in my marriage I'm putting my foot down. So that's that's the attitude. So he says, I'm willing to give in. End of Pasuk Yud Aleph, Yodea Kol Shar Ami, because all the people, Yoshvei Sha'ar, people that live by the gate, that was the Sanhedrin. They live by the gates of Yerushalayim. They all know that you're an Eshes Chayil At, that he's also insinuating you're a Jew, that you're a woman of many great deeds, and like not to be afraid. Now, one other thing about this verse, this is Pasuk Yud Aleph, Va'ata, in the beginning, the first word, and now. He's saying, even though now did not look like a totally clean movie, let's put it that way. And I did answer all the questions at the beginning. Whoever I see someone came on that I had answered all the questions, but I said them already, so I can't go back. But anyways, and now he says, even though this did not look up front like the best way to meet, let's put it that way, I still am saying you really, I see you have pure intentions. He's giving her, encouragement. We see this throughout how he encouraged her last time when she had to go gleaning, and how he made it easier for her. This is all chesed. We don't get the drift of how much encouraging words are chesed. They really are. Now, so now, what else? Where am I now? Let's see. Okay. So Pasuk Yud Gimel, the third verse, he says, sleep here tonight. And in the morning, if someone will redeem you good. Some people say it refers to a person named Tov. If Tov will redeem you good, if Tov will redeem you, he'll redeem you. And if not, I will redeem you. And he swears the name of Hashem, because you're allowed to make a netter, you're allowed to swear to force yourself to do something that you feel has to be done. So stay here till the morning. Now, the question is asked, why did he make her stay for the morning? This is big enough of a temptation. And we're talking about 6 hours that they spent together. They say, the Medrashim say they were both at different edges of the room, crying and davening not to be led to any temptation or not to tempt another person. In the case of Rus, they're all davening for that. But why did he determine that she should remain with him? So the Rabak said, if she leaves in the middle of the night, first of all, if somebody catches her, you should be embarrassed. But also, it's very dangerous to leave in the middle of the night. Rabbi Rennert says that also, that he's worried about her feelings of honor. Like she's going to feel she went through this whole big deal and it's going to be for nothing. She just got to leave now. Okay, bye. It's over, So since it was permitted in those days, Yichud was permitted. It wasn't a sin they were committing. He felt, you know what? Even though it's very bad to be tempted by a woman, I can't embarrass her, humiliate her, put her in danger. That's forbidden. So to balance those two things are very hard. You find people that are very caring about another person, but maybe sometimes at the expense of halacha. And then there's some other people very tznius, but they're not so caring because they're afraid of tznius. To have that balance, that shows how great of a man Boaz was. So, okay, now, so the whole night when they were davening for 6 hours, David HaMelech said, had he gotten upset, he would never have been born. Had Boaz gotten upset and not thought things over and reflected and been calm about things. We've mentioned many times in the past about the Bitachon hotline and that famous thing that Rav Victor Miller says that never do anything in a rush. Never, he said, don't run to do something. You have to be, a person has to have their wits about them whenever they're trying to do something. And for women, of course, it's a bigger challenge than for men. But they have to have their wits about them because we have to be prepared to think things over and know what the right thing to do in a situation is and to keep our balance. Now, in the next, okay, so she slept near his feet and until the morning. And they say she got up before, I guess there's Misha Yakir, it's called in the morning. I don't know exactly. I'm not into Nate's davening. But it's like before Nate's, it's a time where there's some rays of sunlight already coming in a little bit. So the danger, even the drunks are sleeping usually at that point of the night, because approaching dawn. That's when he decided to go. And she got up before they should recognize, and he said, I don't want anyone to know that you came to this winnowing place. So he told her, give me a scarf that you're wearing and hold on to it. And he measured either 6 grains of barley. The 6 grains are for the 6 tzaddikim that are going to come from her. It says Gemara Sanhedrin, David, Mashiach, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those are 6 tzaddikim that will descend from Rus. And all 6 of because of their abstinence from sin for 6 hours. Or he gave her 190 pounds of grain, which is called 6 sa'in. A sa'a is like, I don't know how many omer are in a sa'a, but that weighs 190 pounds in our day. And that was to sustain her and Nomi in the meantime. Again, it's like if you decide you're going to, help people, that's how you did it. Now, why did he go with this grain thing? We find it a lot in Tanakh that Nevi'im used to do certain things. Hashem would tell them, go marry a harlot or go walk the breadth of the length of the land or things like that, because by doing it, you actualize it and it'll happen. So by giving her 6 grains, it's going to actualize that this bracha should come on something. A lot of Hasidic people do this, like they give out their apples or whatever, they give out the fruit. They want to, actualize the bracha on a particular thing. And that's where that source of that custom is. Now, so she did that. He measures it out. She goes to her mother-in-law. This is Pasuk Tes Zayin, verse 16. She goes to her mother-in-law and she says, who are you? Either because what she meant to say, are you married or not married? Like, what's your status? And she told her everything that happened with this man. And she told her about the 6 measures of grain, because it says in this verse, look at 17, because ki amar, you read the word Eli, but it's not written in the Megillas Rus. Eli, he told, don't come empty-handed to your mother-in-law. Eli is not written because Boaz never looked at her. That's what we learned. Where did we learn from who? Igera Shmuel, that he never looked at her even once. So for this reason, Eli is only pronounced, but it's not read. And again, we mentioned before that the reason he didn't want to come empty-handed to her mother-in-law is either because she was the widow of his either cousin or nephew. I'm sorry, cousin or uncle rather. And also because Naomi, according to several opinions, but I couldn't find it this time, Naomi was, I think, related as well in the whole family over there so she was a relation to Boaz. Any case, so we see at the end of this chapter, so now she gave him all these things, and she told her daughter, stay here until you know how this is going to end off. This is Yud Ches, verse 18, because this man is not going to be quiet until he finishes it today. Like this is the way of tzaddikim. When they do something, they do what's called zrizas. Now, zrizas is an important midah. We can't say everything about it, but it doesn't mean that a person is born lazy or a person's not lazy. People are not lazy for things they're interested in. If you go on any form of transport, you go on today, you go to a train or a bus, a plane, nobody's sitting idle. They may be doing all kinds of terrible things, but people reading things you shouldn't be reading or looking at things you shouldn't be looking at. But people do not like sitting idle. If you think of it, even on vacation, how long can you just sit there and do nothing? Nobody does that. Nobody does that. People get bored after a while. They can't. And you think of these relaxing trips, people go camping, schlepping all this heavy, gear with you, and then you have to put it up and put stakes in the ground, and then you're making a campfire and you do things. So that's called great, and even skiing and all these things, so much schlepping and everything on the way to getting to this great moment. People are not lazy. The question is, zrizas means, do you value what you're doing? That's what it means. Like, when it says tzaddikim do everything with zrizas, that doesn't mean that they eat with zrizas and they do this with it. Zrizas means a value of time, feeling like my time is valuable. I want to make the most of it. It's very easy to really keep busy with stupidities. A tzaddik keeps busy with what he has to do, especially if something has to be done. He won't wait until it's done. And that's exactly what Boaz did. Now, we end this chapter, we see the Megillas Chesed, the Chesed of Rus and of Boaz, despite what it looks like, how they conducted themselves with such tremendous above board behavior. And the idea of the Torah is full of Chesed. The first mitzvah in the Torah is Hashem giving clothing to Adam and Chava, and it ends with Hashem burying Moshe Rabbeinu. And we're told in the Gemara Avodah Zarah, it says, Kol ha'osek b'Torah bilvad v'lo gemilas chesed, whoever just engages in Torah study and doesn't engage in acts of kindness, domesh shemi she'ein lo eloka. It's like a person who doesn't have a God. Because the whole idea was, we talked about before, and I hope it was clear to everyone, how Rav Dessler talks about a prerequisite for Torah is chesed. Prerequisite for emunah is chesed. Chesed, we said, is seeing outside of yourself. And if you see outside of yourself, what happens is your ego is not ruling over you. Instead, your idea of what's needed, what's going, what can be done, that's what rules over you. Also, if you notice chesed in others, then that means that you've got that same attribute. You notice, you think, wow, look what she did in her house to have these guests, You're thinking because that's what's on your mind, and it tunes you into thinking outside of yourself, and that's the best prerequisite to acquiring Torah. David HaMelech wrote the whole Sefer Tehillim to give comfort to other people. And this whole alacrity thing with Boaz is similar to Nachshon, who was his ancestor, who was willing to jump into the Red Sea before anyone else did because he felt it was right, and he just did it immediately, didn't waste time. Okay, now we're in the last chapter of Megillas Rus, Perek Daled. And in Perek Daled, this we did not cover at all, so we are now going to cover it. It says, the first pasuk, Allah Hasha'ar, that means he went up to Sanhedrin. He was already up. Remember, it was crack of dawn when he walked her back. Oh, I forgot to show you. In the verse, pasuk Tezvav, in verse 15, it says, Vayavo ha'ir, and he came to the city. Here he was accompanied. He walked Rus back to be safe after he gave her the 6 grains. He accompanied her back to the city, but all it mentions is in the masculine, and he came to the city. But was she hiding? Like, what's the deal? So the Meforshim tell us that he was Where am I? I don't think yeah, he walked her home, even though it didn't look good on him, because he was worried about her. So he was willing to show himself out, okay, albeit it was right before dawn, so not too many people were up at that time, but he felt it's the only right thing to do. You can't, it doesn't matter. You have to be willing to do such a thing if something like that happens. Okay. Anyways, now Pasuk down. So Perk down. So Boaz comes to the gate and he sits there, and then there's this Goel. It just so happens that the Redeemer, whose name was maybe Tov, maybe, or there's a machlokas about that, whether his name was Tov, we don't know his name, and he's passing by, the one that Boaz was talking about. Now, what are the chances that that moment he's passing by Sanhedrin, but Hashem wanted it, Tzaddik wanted already. Hashem said that you did yours, Rus did hers, and now I'm going to do mine. That's the Medrash Rabbah says. Person has to do everything he can do, and then Hashem just makes it happen. And that's what happened. And then he said, Surah. In other words, turn from where you're going. In other words, he was heading in a certain direction. Please turn here and sit down here, Ploni Almoni. Now, almost everyone agrees that's not his name. It means Mr. So-and-so. And he was called that because we're going to see either because he's just not worthy of mention, or because he did something wrong. So he turned around and sat down. Now we learned from this, when he was told to sit down, Medrash Rabbah, Amar Rav Alexandri, Mechan she'ein rishus lekatan le'yeshev al shitein lo hagadol rishus. That's where we know that if you're ushered into a room with a tzaddik or someone like that, you should not sit down until the tzaddik tells you to sit down. Or the Talmud Chacham or the Rav, whoever it is. That's probably why, when kids stand up in a class for their teacher, they should not sit down again until the teacher, well, again, if it's like chuppah, no one's going to sit there and do that. But other occasions, if there's an opportunity, don't sit down until you are told to sit down. That we learned that from this verse. Anyways, why was he called Ploni Almoni? One of the two things that he could have done wrong was he didn't listen to the words of Sanhedrin. Like he was not a learned man, this Ploni Almoni, and he could still be a tzaddik, but he's going to lose the chance to be the father of Mashiach, the forerunner of Mashiach, because he was afraid not to listen. It's such a real shame here. Now, what did he do wrong? We go on. They take a second verse. He takes 10 men. This is to prepare them for a chuppah. There's going to be someone's chuppah that day, either Boaz or Ploni Almoni. And they took 7 Ziknei Ha'ir. These were 10 people of Sanhedrin. And they said, sit down, and they sat. So again, Boaz told them to sit, they sat. They also listened here, hearkened to the words of the great man. And then he told the Goel, he told the one that could redeem. He told Ploni Almoni, okay, I have a portion of field that was to our brother Elimelech, that Nomi is selling, the one that's coming back from Moab. Now, let me just put this just 1 second. Give me a second here. There are 2 opinions, and I just want to make sure I have them. I didn't get enough sleep last night, I'm telling you now. I have it in my other room. I didn't bring this paper with me, but there are 2 opinions as to the relationship. Let's see if I remember that. One is Nachshon ben Aminadav had 3 sons, and one of them was Boaz, and one of them was Tov. So they could have been brothers. According to another opinion, that there were 3 other sons, and one of them was Salmon, who was the father of Boaz, and Boaz was like a nephew of Tov. So if you go according to the opinion that he was a nephew of Tov, if you're talking about who should redeem Rus first, we talked about before that it's a mitzvah in Parshas Bahar that you are supposed to, if you have a family plot, so to speak, family area in a certain shevet in Israel, the family should redeem that place. So Nomi had to sell her field out of poverty. maybe she maintained a house or a little yard or something, but the rest of the things she had to sell. So the family, it's a mitzvah for the family to buy it, and also mitzvah to marry the widow of her son. So, and there were two separate things. So we find that according to the opinion that Ploni Almoni was Boaz's uncle, then he's the first person to approach. But what about if they were both brothers? So we're told by Rabbi Rennert that he says one thing that Boaz, maybe this is Rabbi Brevda, I'm sorry, Rabbi Brevda says that one thing you have to be cognizant of, no matter what you're doing, no matter how big of a mitzvah, if you're stepping on somebody else's toes, you're not doing a mitzvah. So if he's going to object, he just gave him, he said, like, I'm not just taking this in my own hands. I'm consulting with another family member. Do you want to redeem her in the field? Not in that order. First, in fact, he asks him, he say, look, in Pasuk Gimel, he says, I want to talk about the field from our brother Elimelech. So either they were both brothers, or he's just calling him a brother, meaning he's a relative. And he says, and I said, I'm going to tell you, all the people are watching now. Are you willing to buy the field? And he says, I'm willing to buy it. That's what he said. Pasuk Hey, verse 5. Boaz says, the day you buy the field from Nomi and from Rus the Moabite, as he mentions, the wife of the dead that you bought it from, are you willing to marry her to keep the name of the departed in the family? And he says, I can't do this. Panash chesis nachal asi. I'll destroy my inheritance. You redeem her, because I can't redeem her. What does this mean? First of all, the Yavitz tells us, and I heard this from the name of Ramat Solomon, the biggest chesed is to help people in your own family. People always think, I didn't do any chesed today. Even to encourage people in your family to do chesed with them in any way, that's chesed. Of course, if you're denying other people because you're only exclusively helping your family, that's also not right. But your family does come first. That's what we believe, especially to give the neshama of your family an aliyah. Now, let's explain something here. At most, nobody was a brother of Machlon. We're talking about Yibum. A lot of people don't know this. He's not doing the mitzvah of Yibum or Chalitza in this parak. There's no Yibum here. This is like an idea of Yibum. Yibum would be a brother's wife. That's it. That's the only one you do a mitzvah with, is to marry your wife's widow. That's in any case, he was either the uncle of or the cousin of, one of the two. So in any case, that's not a mitzvah of Yibum. It's just like to keep that. There's an idea in Kabbalah that you're like the soul of the departed has no rest. It never had children. So by marrying his widow, the child born to this union is going to be, the soul of that person that's departed. So that's what really happened here. And he says, I can't do it. Either one of two things, three things really. So he said, number one, the fact that he made it very clear, Rus HaMoaviyah, he made it clear she's a Moabite woman, insinuating a Moabite woman is allowed to come into the Jewish people. It's a Moabite man that has refused conversion, not a Moabite woman. So there's no reason why Rus cannot be a convert. There's no reason. That's what and he said it in front of Sanhedrin. And they said also, by the time this was all taking place, he made sure a lot of people had gathered, and this was being now explored and explained in public. Everyone should know a Moabite woman is allowed to convert. Like, this is it. He's making it very, very clear in front of Sanhedrin and in front of many, many people that had gathered outside of Sanhedrin. So Ploni Almoni, according to one opinion, felt, what? Even though the rabbis today say that it's allowed, maybe next generation, they're going to find something wrong with it, and it's ultimately not going to be allowed. And if it's not going to be allowed, why should I ruin my family lineage? Like, in other words, he didn't trust the Rabbanim. Because he didn't trust the Rabbanim, he lost Mashiach, according to this opinion. Because you didn't listen to your Rabbanim. It shows how important it is to have a Rav. And it's not just for chickens and for Shabbos. Things that we're doing, does it stem with halacha? Does it fit with halacha? Is it the right thing to do? Sometimes we think we know better and we don't. Another case, the Alshich says, he was married already with a child, and he didn't want to ruin his nachala. He didn't want to ruin his inheritance. Means bring two women into the picture, you're going to have a real mess. So he didn't want to have this scenario with two rivals and all that. He's not for me. I think I mentioned to you once that one of my friends told me that she asked her husband after Mashiach, "Are you going to want another wife?" And he told her, "One's enough for me, thank you." Anyways, so the third reason, the Bach says, he felt, Ploni Amalek felt, I'm a little person. If I'm going to do this, it's not going to make waves. It's not going to make, if you want to enact, you're going to show that this is correct and it's halachically permissible, you're the Gadol Hador, you should marry her. That way everyone will know it's kosher. Whereas if I, this little guy that doesn't know too much, if I do it, so what? They're not going to question it. In fact, until the time of King David HaMelech, people were still questioning, what was his name? Doeg Hadomi said, that, he was already questioning David's lineage. He's from the Moabite woman. There were still people to the time of David questioning this halacha, even though it was spread and it was mentioned in public, and Shmuel Hanavi knew about it, and he knew that Boaz had enacted. That's why Megillas Rus is written, to show us that it's permissible. Okay, if you look at Pasuk Zion now, verse 7. And this was an ancient custom. It's very interesting. Ala geula v'ala tamura, for the redemption and for the payment. Well, tamura means, geula, says Rashi, means like whenever you make a kinyan, whenever you're going to sell something, or even when you're exchanging things, you're going to make a swap. Okay, that a person would take off his shoe. Some people say it could have been a glove even, and it was done in ancient aristocracy. We even do this today. You make a kinyan, you're holding a scarf, you're holding something to make a kinyan. This is not chalitza. This is not chalitza. A lot of people think it is. Taking off the shoe here was just a sign. The reason Ibn Ezra says they did it with a shoe is because if you used another garment, it would be immodest. But your shoes, you can, and they're easy to take off. It's right, easily accessible. You just take it off and you lift it to show. It's a sign of an old, barter. It was an ancient custom that he reenacted, apparently, that it was like losing, people weren't using it so much, but it was from ancient times that Boaz reenacted this, that you took off your shoe, you gave it to your friends, a sign that you're making some kind of deal together. And this was like giving testimony in Yisrael. And Pasuk Ches, verse 8, the Goel, the Ploni Almoni, says to Boaz, okay, you can buy for yourself. And it says, Vayishlof na'alo, and he took off his shoe. Which it should have said, if it would have been chalitza, the Meforshim tell us it would have said, Vayachalotz na'alo, like the Lashon chalitza, to take off his shoe. Because there's no bibum, there's no chalitza here. These aren't two brothers scenario. This is either an uncle or a cousin. Now, so Boaz told all the Zkanim, he told all the people in Sanhedrin, and all Am, you're all witnesses today that I bought everything from Elimelech and everything from Chilion and Machlon. In other words, that if there's anybody protesting about Chilion, like later Orpah comes back and protests, right now he's buying this, like on behalf, there can be no contesting this. And then the next verse, he puts them separately because he's not equating a woman with chattel. A woman's not equated with property. Like that's not how we look at Jewish women. So, and also Rus, the Moabite, the wife of Machlon, and that's why some people said she may be converted beforehand, because how could she be called his wife if she wasn't Jewish at that point? So it could have been, like we spoke about previous 2 classes ago, could have been a retroactive conversion that happened, and now he's attesting to that. I bought for myself for a wife to put the name of the deceased on his inheritance, and that his name will never be erased. And you are now all witnesses to this. So the whole nation that was watching that, they all said, we're witnessing. And Hashem should give this woman that comes to your house to Rachel Leah. Should be like Rachel and Leah. Why should she be like Rachel and Leah? So different things. The Malbim says should be a tzedekah like Rachel and Leah, both holy. The Sefer Gishmei Bracha says Rachel and Leah both came from a wicked father. Rus did not come from such a great nation as well. And, he equates her to Rachel and Leah, having gone from such a low place to such a high place. And also another opinion is totally accepted as Jews. Just like Rachel and Leah are a household name, and we consider them the matriarchs, Rus should be considered a equally valid matriarch of the Jewish people. And then he says the second thing, according to the Malbim, that Banu Shteim, Rachel and Leah, Asher Banu Shteim is Beis Yisrael. Look at a testimony to the Jewish woman, that Rachel and Leah built Beis Yisrael. He didn't say Yaakov. Rachel and Leah built Beis Yisrael. They built the house of Yisrael. Shows what the women make the kids. I once heard Rav Scheinberg Zatzal say, I heard him say this in public, to say the verse, Shema b'ni musar avicha, listen, my son, hearken the words of your father, v'al titosh, but you'll never give up the words of your mother. A woman's impact on a family is much stronger than the father's, there's no question. And that's what Rav Scheinberg was saying. Any case, a seichayil be'efrasa, a second bracha was given that by the people, that you should accomplish a lot, perfection in Ephras, which was where they were from in Beis Lechem. You should be like a pride, source of pride to the whole Beis Lechem. Ukra shame beVeis Lechem, and you should be called by name. You have to be a name of greatness in the house of Beis Lechem. And your house, the third bracha according to Malbim is your house should be like the house of parrots, just like parrots. They had a whole thing like Tamar. There was like a Yibum situation. Parrots, was for his soul came out into Tamar. So too, the soul of Machlon is coming out into Rus. You should be, like that she gave birth for Yehuda, from like Hashem should give you from this woman. And he took Rus, and she was from like a wife. This is verse 13. By Avoe Leha, and he came to her, and God gave her Herayon. He gave her pregnancy. Herayon in Gematria is 271. That adds up to the days, according to Chazal, that we believe a woman is pregnant. 271 days is, Yalkut says this. Gemara Nida, I'm sorry. That's the Gematria of Herayon. And now, remember again, she either didn't have a womb at all, or her womb was faulty. So Hashem made her pregnant. She was not able to have a child until now. Now, according to Chazal, Boaz died that same night as the wedding night. He died that night. She got pregnant, and that was it. He died. And she gave birth to a son. And look at Pasuk Yudal, the 14th verse, V'tomarna hanashim el Naomi. And the women said to Naomi, Baruch Hashem, he didn't leave from you. You have a redeemer, and he'll have a name in Yisrael. He'll be something. You're going to have Vayalach meshiv nefesh. He'll be a comfort for you for all the hardship you went through. And to feed you in your older years. Because your daughter-in-law that you loved, that she's better than 7 children, better than 7 sons, she gave birth for you. So it says in the next verse 16, Naomi took the child and she put it against her chest, and she was able to nurse the child. So if that's not a proof that she's the child's mother, that Machlon lives again, there's no other proof, that all of a sudden, why is she all of a sudden able to nurse? And all of a sudden, verse 17, the neighbors are saying there's a son given to Naomi, and they called him Oved. Now they can't call him, it's interesting that they gave him that name, just to Oved Hashem, because there's 2 people he'd have to name after, either Machlon or Boaz. Like, which one should he go for? Machlon was just a shliach, and Machlon was not, didn't quite live up to what he should have been. But here, Oved means he's going to be a servant of Hashem. Now, people ask me the question, why is it that it has to happen this way? It looks like Rus got the raw end of the deal. All of a sudden, Naomi's nursing her baby. And it said, even if you look, Rus is not mentioned anymore after this. All talks about all the family and how they're related to David, how the whole, ancestry works. But what we learned from this is that it's very similar to the idea of Sarah taking Hagar, and also the nurse, the other 2 wives. Did you ever wonder, we talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. Now we're all equal, right? Every Shevet is a Jew, right? Every single Shevet. But Rachel and Leah were supposed to be stupendous, and Bilhah and Zilpah were their servants. but yet they're equal children to us. Now, Hagar is another story, and that's that's for a different time. But how could the Bill and Zilpah's children be considered, part of the 12 tribes? So they subjugated themselves, that their Rebbitzins were so much their mentors that whatever they said, they subjugated themselves to, and they even were messengers to go to Yaakov because, if their mistresses couldn't give birth or whatever it was at the time that they substituted, so to speak. It's like Leah overseeing the whole thing, or like Rachel overseeing the whole thing. That's what they did, these maidservants. And so they are considered children of Rachel and Leah. It didn't say in Bilhah and Zilpah. We don't mention that. And the same thing that was Sarah's intention of bringing Hagar on the scene. Hagar ruined her plan, but she wanted, if you just go according to the way of Sarah, you're like Sarah's substitute. And in this way, Sarah's giving of herself, because Sarah's not even going through it. Like here, Naomi's not getting married to Boaz. Rus is getting married to Boaz. And Rus did totally give in. Who would want to marry somebody 40 years your senior and, 1 foot in the grave, literally? And just think, if you had waited one more day, look how it shows how it's important to do something immediately. Like he just did it immediately because of that. He had Mashiach as his descendant. So we learned from this that, like you could give yourself over to a cause, and you become one with the cause, and that's bigger than yourself. And that's really what Rus was doing. And also she felt like Naomi knows how to raise him better than me. Now, it doesn't mean Rus went out to Saks Fifth Avenue and her mother was just, mother-in-law was doing all the child raising. I'm sure Rus did all the hard stuff, all the heavy lifting, so to speak. I'm sure they did, but it was all in like Torah of Naomi, who was from Beis Lechem and from this holy lineage. Okay, so let's review some of the major lessons we learned today, ladies. The greatest things come in murky ways, and that's Mashiach's background, to elevate sparks. Our mission in Gullus, that we're supposed to pick up the things along the way and elevate them to holiness, to make a place of tefillah, to take food, and by making a bracha, you elevate it, to all the kind of things that can happen when we elevate small things. And that's really the purpose of Mashiach, to lift everyone's soul. And it comes in a murky way, so we'll do it for the sake of heaven. Because if it's done in a way where you get a lot of applause and it looks all kosher and beautiful, it's not such an act of serving God anymore. It's an act of serving yourself. So that even things that are questionable to other people, they're doing these actions in order that there should be an elevation, and that people should see in this that they can, that I'm doing for the sake of heaven, and that there's no other ulterior motives involved. Not to be embarrassed if we have to do something. Some people have to daven on a train or on a bus or something. Here, look what Rus and Boaz had to undergo, the embarrassment, in order to not shame another person, in order to do the right thing. Shabbos clothes, to wear Shabbos clothes, to make, when we, let's say, go bench lift, we should try to be wearing our Shabbos clothes, to make everything as Shabbos-tic as possible, to have the table set maybe earlier than we maybe Thursday night, maybe Thursday, whatever, to have it nice for Shabbos. That's the whole idea. If she had to dress up to go to Boaz. The bracha of a tzaddik, how Naomi blessed Boaz, and Boaz blessed Rus, and because of that, which against all odds, they had a child. The big deal that how in the case of Tov, even though he, Boaz maybe was the greater of the two, he didn't want to embarrass him. So he had to ask his permission to marry. He had to let him redeem first. If you're doing a very glorious, amazing thing, don't do it while stepping on someone else's toes. Or the idea that Rus, even though she was not it seemed like being immodest potential in the situation. He still didn't want to hurt her or cause her any harm. To do things with zrizas, alacrity, because that shows you value time and value what you're doing. When you do something at every given moment, it shows you value it. The chesed in this Megillah, and listening to Rabbanim. So this chesed and giving it to others is the cornerstone of Megillas Rus, and the cornerstone for us accepting the Torah. I thank you for listening. And I guess we could turn off this recording. I thank Rivka Shabsov for doing her amazing job that she always does.